getting performance out of your vehicle that you never demanded of it before, and you never knew that you had idiosyncrasies before until you're put in circumstances. And part of the overcoming process is, we've been partnered in our classroom with almost every individual here. And it's not, a relationship like a human, like we said, where you fall back on, other things. You are learning things about yourself that you never knew that your container necessarily had before, or sometimes even your soul, and learning to get control of that and trying to get a behavior that's more a match. I mean, most of you have in your consciousness some idea of what an angelic being, how they would behave, even though we don't want to use religious terms. But we are striving for a behavior that's more refined. That kingdom level is much more refined in their relationships and responses than this kingdom level. Just like the human kingdom, hopefully, for the most part, is more refined or more advanced than the animal kingdom, although it's debatable at times. But we are trying to learn a behavior and a conduct and a control that's a whole kingdom strata above where we are now. And that is, it's a literal training process that we're going through. It's nothing spiritual, nothing religious about it. We're trying to learn the basics of control and behavior. It's just very simple.
Are you able to go in touch with your families after all of these years?
We'd like to answer or address people who raise their hands, if you wouldn't mind, because there are other individuals in the audience who have questions, been waiting patiently to ask them.
And I think this man in the middle here was next.
Does the Creator have a physical body?
Well, yes, he does. But for us to really talk about it, first of all, we don't know what it would be like. Okay, it's like a dog trying to understand what's happening in a corporation's boardroom. We just don't have the computer itself. These brains is like a 8086 computer as compared to a Cray or something. Okay, and so we don't really know how to talk about that. But we understand that he does have a physical body, but it may be a physical that we wouldn't define in the physics of this planet as physical. Is that appropriate?
You say you don't drink and you don't smoke. What type of food do you eat?
Well, we've been through a wide range of different types of diets over the years. For a time we thought that perhaps it was to help purify these bodies in preparation for our eventual transformation into new creatures. And so we experimented with vegetarianism. We tried fruitarian diet for a while. We were on a lemonade fast for 38 days. We're on a water fast for 12 days. And what we finally arrived at was that these were simply all experiments in determining whether or not we were willing to adapt to that diet, trusting that the outcome would be for our best interest, in our best interest. And the byproduct of that effort was a type of flexibility and recognition of resilience that we didn't have prior to that. But at this point in time, we pretty much consume whatever is offered to us outside of seafood and anything that's obviously not fit to eat. Seafood we primarily don't eat simply because the standards of what's okay and what isn't okay in that industry are somewhat questionable at this time, and the oceans and rivers of this planet are pretty badly polluted.
Some people are rightfully concerned sometimes with diet and consuming, and we do feel like originally when the planet was first set up, perhaps, if you go back to the records, it was more appropriate, and the better food was maybe fruits, vegetables, and nuts. But we found through even our own experimentation that man has so tampered with that product that it no longer resembles what it was then. I mean, it's cosmetically nice, it has a long shelf life, but nutritionally it's really pretty poor. Even if you go strictly organic, it's very difficult to get the sustenance you need. We tried it. Even for a small person like I am, I mean, I would have to sit down in the morning when we were on fruit and I'd have 12 oranges and a pile of nuts, and then 4 hours later I'd be having a pile of carrots. And I mean, we would be consuming so much volume and still not have the stamina that we think was intended when those products, those fruits, those vegetables were put on this planet. And we feel like that's just an indication that this planet is time to have a recycling time for a break. And that, I mean, as our containers can react to that, the plants can react to that pretty severely as a negative, but really, that's a merciful thing for the planet. The planet has served well, it needs a break. The population has overtaxed it, can't support the life on this planet anymore. And even though we're talking possibly about, you know, major loss of vehicles or containers, we also know that that's really not what is of value here anyway. It's what's inside the container that is of value. And we know that nothing of value will be lost. So there's a big picture happening now, and you can look to the scientific community and they'll tell you about an ecosystem that is beyond repair by humans. An ozone layer that is, as we all know, got a very big hole in it. And you can turn to the TV evangelists and they know that something's happening. The increase in UFO sightings, that all of that is not business as usual on this planet. There is something significant happening out there. And if people, even the media tries to sweep it under the carpet, but if you look at the weather systems, the natural catastrophes that have happened, it all adds up to this. There is something major going on here. And what we're telling you is a part. It is move-up time. Just as, let's say in the animal kingdom, if you look at a gorilla who now has the capacity to use a Macintosh computer, or a dolphin who communicates with its master, those spirits, or whatever you want to call that life force that's in that vehicle, is pushing the upper envelopes of what they can perform, and they're ready for a new set of clothes, a new container that has greater capacities, and it's time for them to move up. And it's the same thing in the human kingdom. There are humans who have experienced so much of the spectrum of what is available at the human kingdom that they are ready to move up. And it's all peaking at this time. And we're not going to, play the prophet and say it's going to happen on this day or that day, but we know that this is a certain segment of time that has been talked about for a long period and is very significant to all of us.
One of the main reasons we don't have the time or the date is simply that the next level waits and sees what the response is to this second wave or second harvest or second rapture, whatever you want to call it. In other words, it's like as this information goes out there and people respond, the next level may let things continue and keep everything under control so people have time to go through their changeover. And we don't know whether one person's going to respond, or 100, or 1,000, or 100,000, 144,000. But we don't know what's going to happen. So we're playing it, and sort of day by day on what they tell us is happening. So we look to the next level for everything that we do, and when it's time for us to know all these more details of how it all works, we feel like we'll be filled in with it.
Okay, it says here that the next level has no time, but yet there is only a certain time where the individuals who have chosen to shed their humanness and go to the next level can do so. So what happens to the people, like when your leaders came down in 1975 or around that time? What happens to people who were on the same path as you and who had chosen to go up to the next level and their physical bodies died? Did they just miss their chance, or what happens to their souls? I mean, do they come back to another human form and start their whole path again, or do they still have their knowledge, or do they go on?
Okay. It's our understanding that if, say, tomorrow one of us were to be hit by a truck or something and lose our vehicle, that nothing that we had accomplished up until this point would be lost. And if we had reached a stage where the next level determined that the soul occupying this body, this vehicle, was viable, compatible with the next level vehicle, then it would receive that new vehicle. If that individual is not ready to do that, then the next level would certainly make the necessary arrangements for that soul to pick up on its lessons wherever it left off. As far as what happens to all those spirits or souls out there that don't come in contact with this information, we don't have enough knowledge about that to speak about it accurately, any more than we can say, draw any meaning from there are millions of fish in the sea, and a few get caught and a few get eaten, and so what happens to the ones that don't get caught? I mean, it's just, there's only so much information we've got about the whole picture.
We just know that it goes in cycles. Like, we have very little record, but we know there was like Atlantis, Lemuria, there were previous civilizations. We know this one's running for approximately 6,000 years, it's about to end. There's going to be a recyclement of all of the environment, and all we've been told is that anything that's worth keeping, that's in forward motion, that's valuable, will be saved, will be replanted, and the whole thing will start again. But we don't know exactly the details. And we don't think we're supposed to know. In other words, it's just beyond what we're supposed to know.
You pretty much have poo-pooed, let's back up. You talked about conventional paths like religion, and then there's the unconventional paths that you refer to, like the zillion and one new age avenues that you can take. And you pretty much inadvertently or intentionally discredited them, or said, well, in fact, they're not what they appear to be. They're really Luciferian, or they're of dubious origin, and so you want to stay away from them. Are you in your view, are there any other paths that will result in this evolution? I mean, are you saying that you 48 people are the only souls that are going to make an evolutionary jump? Is there something that, are there other paths that this could result in that aren't your particular path? Are you the only 48 people who have access to the truth and to the idea of evolution?
First of all, let me say that any path that gets you to the top of the mountain is fine. And we would encourage people to pursue whatever path they feel inclined to pursue, as long as they don't find that that's a stopping place. Because once you arrive at feeling like, well, you've got all the answers, but you still remain in the human condition, then you're still in the human condition. What we're saying is that, to the best of our knowledge, the information we're sharing with you is the only way off the mountain. And we would be dishonest to say that we think otherwise. It would be like us saying, well, we're sorry, we know that this is the only way, but we'd rather not talk about it. And deprive those souls that are ready to take this leap the opportunity to do so. Because our concern is that there are some souls ready for this step. And those are the ones we're trying to reach. This opportunity may not come to them again. And so our focus is on helping those individuals take that step if that's what they want to do.
Okay, so in your view, you are the only path, or at least the only path that you know of. You were the sole purveyors of truth, and I don't mean it in an egotistical way. This is like you're it.
Maybe we could approach this from another angle. Let's just try a whole different way of looking at it. This is like a family reunion. Okay? In other words, we're part of a family, of the soul, not of the vehicles. Okay? What we're doing is we're here looking for other members of the family. Now, as we tried to say, and it's hard to talk about this because we've all been programmed that this is nonsense, but it's like there's a lot of families, okay? And therefore, if you follow certain spiritual techniques, you can join other families. You may even be able to go to another star system with the Ashtar Command or something. They may come here and pick people up. We don't know. But what we're saying is this is the only way that you enter what our family is, where we want to go, where people are genderless, where they are mere children. They're not gods. They're little children starting out as little babes in a kingdom level where they look to a father, to a line of fathers. In other words, this is the structure of this family. And those who are interested in joining this family will recognize that these are the family traits that they want. There's many other families, And those methods may well work to get them into those families. So it's more a choice of which family you want to belong to than this is the only way. This is the only way into this particular family.
So you're not saying that the other families are corrupt or misguided or Luciferian, or are you?
We're saying the other families are either mammalian or reptilian or something other than purely androgynous beings.
I don't want to dominate this
Right.
question.
No, it's okay, but
We
it's
want
a
to
good
get to
question.
the bottom of your,
Yeah, and
the answer.
see, the bottom line is that anything in this experiment can be used for growth. It's not what you get into that's that important, it's what you get out of. And it's perfectly natural, perfectly commonsensical to think in terms of, if you're going to go to a place that's totally different, their ways of acting, their ways of thinking, their ways of the things they like to do, the behavior, the function that they have is all very different. You have to leave the old ways behind. If you really wanted to become, a Frenchman that could go over to France and blend in and no one would know that you were from somewhere else, well, then you'd probably study pretty hard of their culture and their language and their etiquette and everything about them so that you could go there and be one of them. Well, that's like what we're doing. Now, all these other things, all these other roads, all these other options, religions, spiritual paths, they can all accomplish giving a soul certain lessons and certain experiences, but unfortunately, most of it is going to show you what's not real. But it doesn't mean it's a negative while you're in it. The only negative is staying with it so long that you get stuck in it. And so we're saying that after you've gone through so many searches, so many paths, you've meditated to where you feel like the nothingness as, you're part of that nothingness, which to us doesn't make sense. So we've done those kind of things and we've believed in them to some degree over, before we met our teachers. But it didn't get us to what we felt was solid, real service in a kingdom level that was real. So this put all the pieces together in our computers. And if it doesn't for somebody else, well, then we say, go for what puts the pieces together for you. But we feel like anyone who's going to want to be out of the human kingdom, eventually, if they're given the chance, will have to come upon a formula that separates them totally from the human kingdom.
And we also do think that this is the only formula that will have you overcome death. That you will not have to go through that recycling process again. Because whether the other families that Matt was talking about, they are subject to death and decay. It's only when you make an actual kingdom level leap, an actual transition into this kingdom level, can you leave behind that recycling process. So we are, in a sense, very literally overcoming death.
In other words, all the other things are part of a holographic classroom. But the only place where you're going to have, everlasting life and all these things is outside of this whole time and space continuum. And the only thing that's outside of time and space is the thing that created time and space as an experiment, and that's the kingdom of heaven, the evolutionary level above human. And that's where we feel like we're going. And others, like when you say only the 48 or whatever, everybody, anybody out there who wants to do this can do it. So, it's not like it's limited. It's not like some elitist thing. Anybody out there can do it if they want to do it.
Also want to clarify that I don't know where the number 48 came from, but we don't know exactly how many there are doing this.
There were 24 there were 24 people that completed the 18 years in seclusion in the monastery, however you want to phrase it, for lack of a better word. 100 started, 24 finished, and since then it's expanded as people have joined. We don't know where we stand.
I was just wondering, for instance, T, when she left, or he left in her body.
Right. Got that right.
Was this a up and ship, or was this physical death? I'm just wondering if there's a contradiction in terms here. I'm trying to
No, it
figure
was
something
a
out.
physical death of the vehicle. In other words, the body died.
Okay.
And the soul occupying that body returned to its rightful place in the heavens, returned to its body in the heavens. Now, while T was incarnate here, it was, especially towards the end of the classroom experience for her, a very frustrating experience because she was aware of a lot of knowledge, a lot of mind, if you will, surrounding her vehicle that she simply could not pull through that primitive circuitry. It was like trying to plug in, you know, a 1,000 gigawatt voltage into a tiny little wire that really was not designed to handle that. And a great deal of the information that she had to be translated to us through Doe. In other words, he had to serve as a connection between us and her. Even though the words she chose were generally very simple, it was clear after he explained what her thinking was that there was a much bigger picture there than we could comprehend upon just listening to her words alone.
And
So-
she knew all along that she was here just to get him started. In other words, it's his task in the same sense that, at least for this time, it's our task to talk to you. It's not that Doe couldn't come up here and do a lot better job, but it's our chance to, you know, use what we've learned, plus we're much closer to where you're at because we haven't been up there and had, you know, been in glorified bodies and all this stuff. We're much closer, we're younger, and therefore we can relate better to what you deal with because we've dealt with it more recently. I don't know if that makes sense.
Is there an essence, not to go too far, is there an essence of compassion, or that thing we call, I don't want to get, you know, not the human definition of love, and
Yes.
I don't want to categorize it, but
Yes.
is there this
Do you-
overriding pervasive feeling involved?
Do you watch Star Trek: The Next Generation?
I have.
Okay. There's an individual on board that crew who is supposedly an android and who is supposedly devoid of all human emotions. Yet, in our view, and we could be wrong about this, he demonstrates compassion for the rest of his crew that far exceeds any compassion any of the others on that crew are capable of demonstrating.
Responsibility of duty.
Simply because he is totally willing to put himself last if he sees that that is the best way to handle the circumstance. And there are countless times when they rely on him to pull them out of a deep hole of trouble because they know they can rely on his objectivity and his ability to see the circumstance from a totally non-personal point of view. He sees it from the point of view of the interest of the crew, and he puts the crew first. And that, in our view, is demonstrating a type of compassion that's very rare at the human level.
Yes, but that's not to say that members of the next level are all of that nature without, there's emotion in the next level. There is, the feeling of love is very strong, but it's not human love. Human love usually is selfishly based. And what I'll give because I want something back, and even subconsciously. You know, like, take an example of two people who love each other. They say they love each other and they try to act that way. And one of them all of a sudden starts to just, you know, say, oh, well, I'm a little interested in going a little separate. That love can turn to hate just like that. It's an example of how fragile what humans call love is, and how it's not based on something that's real tangible and real, you know, full of depth. But the next level's love is, first of all, for a member to say, okay, I'm going to do a task. A task is offered, or they volunteer to leave a physical body that's like a space shuttle compared to a Model T in the human kingdom. In other words, I'm going to go down to that kingdom, and I'm going to try to interface with that Model T kind of computer in order that I can tell you about it. Okay, that's what a member of the next level is willing to give up for the time period of doing that task. Now, even while he's down here doing that task, he is subject to all the misery of this environment. It would be like going into the dog pit, you know, and mingling with the dogs and living with them and being aware that you're not a dog. And so there's a lot of love there. Plus, do you know how many times we put our older member through the ringer as far as, you know, how slow we've been to understand certain things and to change our behavior? And he's constantly tolerant of us, but intolerant at the same time to help us grow. And I mean, there's demonstration upon demonstration of love in the next level.
The main reason we don't talk about it is because it's very difficult to be objective and to separate, you know, lust from love and what true love is. And so sometimes our presentation can come across as being, you know, more intellectual, but anything that you can see that we might give up on a human level is replaced a whole octave higher on that kingdom level. I mean, you have to know that if the Creator created all this, He's not going to have a kingdom level that doesn't have satisfactions and emotions, compassion that far exceeds this level. I mean, it's a whole strata higher. Just like the human kingdom has a whole set of emotions that far are, advanced of the animal kingdom. It's the same thing.
So in other words, you're not trying to get rid of a sense of humor, or you're not trying to get rid of love. You're trying to get rid of the part of it, the characteristics of it that are only human, and adapt those to the next level. So in other words, if your vehicle, if your genetic past sort of got a kick out of the humor that put somebody down, or was sarcastic, or in other words, got its kicks out of seeing somebody else's misery, or even causing it, you realize, well, gee, that's not the way next level humor is. So you abort that part of the humor, and you pull in more of a silly humor. I mean, there's nobody sillier than us. I mean, we may seem a little serious here because we're faced with this big audience, and we're not exactly, polished speakers. But in reality, when we're working together as a crew, I mean, we're pretty silly. I mean, one of the main characteristics of being able to do this task is sense of humor. If you can't keep your sense of humor, your pain quotient goes up. I mean, because you're faced with overcoming things, and it's like the more you can laugh at it, and anybody, especially new people, can testify that, if you can keep your sense of humor and laugh at yourself, laugh at what's going on.
Makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, it makes the medicine go down when you add a little sugar, so it's more pleasant.
The one on top. Yes.
Okay, before I speak, please don't put that up. Thank you. This is a question about, if you're referring to what the speaker in the center was talking about, with fruits being realer at an earlier time. And I'll try to figure out the space, but of all your members, are all of them white that are in your group? Repeat the question.
So you were asking if all of our members were white. Well, there's Destin up there, and then we have where's Sky? Sky's out front, maybe, I don't know. And no, they're not all white.
Okay.
We just happen to be a white crew here.
Right, mongrels.
Yes, we have from all races.
Okay.
All races, and the age varies quite a bit too from what you probably see here. We're just doing different tasks at different times.
There,
we try to not see anybody according to race, sex, age, any of that. I mean, those are all characteristics that are
right, or sexual preference in the past. There's, like whether you're a homosexual or bisexual or heterosexual, all that's got to go.
Either way.
We don't care what you did before. If you were in prison and you did something terrible, well, if you're not that person now, then we want you with us.
And we don't have the females just doing the laundry and cooking and the males doing the cars.
It just seems that like everything down through time, or is it everything that you see about, let's say, aliens, secret societies, cults, if you want to use that term, is always white and always white based. And it just seems like, how can a primarily white group be rewarded with the next level if they've committed the most evil, heinous crimes throughout history?
Well, one thing is the soul. We're talking about the soul doesn't have any color. It doesn't have white, doesn't have black. It's just a soul. Now, the vehicle that it's assigned to for its most, for the lessons that it